Uh, Good afternoon, everyone. Are you hearing me? Hello.
Yes, I am. Personally, I'm getting you. I'm getting you.
Okay, very well.
Myself,
Let's wait for 5 minutes, then we will start the lectures. I have shared the lectures materials. I don't know whether you have received it.
Yes, mine. I've received mine.
Okay, great. So let's just wait for 5 minutes and we will start the lectures. It's not the, it's something we are all adjusting to it, this online platform. So once the lectures start, then I will mute all of you so that there will be no noise.
No problem.
After the lectures, if you have questions, you can ask. You can send me an email, or through WhatsApp group, you can share your problems or any question that you have.
Okay.
So 5:35, we are going to start, and I will mute all of you so that we can focus on the lectures, because some of you might be having background noise which might disturb all of us.
Okay.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, how's work?
Alhamdulillah, you okay?
Yeah, that's good. I'm fine. I'm okay. So how is your mathematics level? I don't know the mathematics level of the class.
You're gonna try. Definitely, you're gonna try. I left because that's all I've been doing as work. But let's see how it's gonna be.
So for today's course, let's see it as a refresher of what you have done in the high school. It's more about equation. Then the real thing we will start in maybe next class, where we have to look at some functions, linear function, quadratic. We will be looking more of those two functions, and we look at their application in economics and other social sciences as well. But today, just see as a refresher, because it's important we know how to solve certain equations and how to identify them as well. The key is I will be sharing a lot of materials with you. It's not like a traditional way of delivering lectures. Even the lecturers, we are trying to adjust to these new realities. The platform is not that 100% user friendly, and so it won't be like a traditional way of delivering lectures, but we will do our best, and I expect you also to do your best. I will always give you materials to read ahead.
Okay, thank you.
We have 10. So if you log in, please write your name, your full name, and your student number. We are tasked to keep your attendance as well. I will take that as well. And exactly, when we are lecturing, typing is even very, very difficult with this kind of platform. So let's see how best, we will see how best we will be able to use this in our hands to deliver, but it's not like traditional way of delivery. But yet still with efforts from myself and from you people, then I think we'll be able to achieve our goals. All right, so I'm starting you can tell your colleagues to write their names and student number. So I'm starting the lecture, so I'm muting all of you. All right, is it good afternoon or evening? Welcome to Mathematics for Business and Social Sciences. Today, this is our chapter 1. Let's call this as chapter 1. As I said, let's see it as a refresher course. These are what we will be doing today. There are some of the things you have already seen in high school, but it's important we review. People are coming from different background. So let's take it as a refresher course. Next class, we will start the real course content, whereby we will look at some functions. So our topic today is solving equations, and I think it's very, very important. Before we start solving equation, we know what is an equation. What is the meaning of equation? So first things, let's look at what is an equation. So let's talk about an equation. Obviously, it will be very important. Let me write one equation. This can be be an equation. So if we look at this is an equation. And why do we call it an equation? So first of all, when we talked about equation, we are talking about having two mathematical expressions separated by equals to sign. So we have an equals to sign here. This is an equals to sign. So this 24 and 5x plus 9, we call this an expression. We can call it an expression or mathematical expression. In short, we call it expression. So this also is an expression in short. So when we talked about an equation, we are talking about having two mathematical expressions. One is on the right-hand side of the equation, equals to sign. Another mathematical expression is on the left side of the equation. So in short, if you hear equation, is simply two mathematical expressions separated by an equals to sign. So if you see a mathematical expression here and see another one here separated by equals to sign, you can call it an equation. As I said, our topic today is to find ways how to solve these mathematical equations. We can have different types of equations. For example, we have this 5x plus 9 equals to 24. This is an equation. As I said, mathematical equation is just an expression, two expressions separated by an equals to sign. So we can have an equation like this also, x squared plus 8x minus 9 equals to 0. So if you look at this also, is an equation because we have an equals to sign here. This equals to sign separates this mathematical equation from this mathematical equation. So this is an equation. This also is an equation. So we can also have a third equation whereby it's a system of equations. So we can have an equation like this, 2x plus 3y equals to 18. Then we also have 3x minus 4y equals to minus 7. So this is another equation, the third one. If you observe very well this third equation, we have two equations there. So this is another equation. It's important we know before solving any equation, we know what type of equation we are dealing with. Obviously, I'm sure you have seen this in your high school. So normally you will see that normally we call this as a linear equation. And we will call this as a quadratic equation. Quadratic equation. And this one, we will call it as system of equation. Sometimes people will call it simultaneous equation. System of equation. They call it simultaneous equation because we have two equations in two unknowns. So this is one equation, two equations. So they bring two equations together. So that's why we call it systems of equation. Some people, in some math book, you will see simultaneous equation. So why do we call this as a linear equation? Why do we call this as a quadratic equation? And why do we call this as a simultaneous or system of equation? So when you look at a mathematical equation, first what you need to try to identify is to ask yourself, what type of equation am I dealing with? Because the type of equation you are dealing with will determine what kind of method you will use to solve that equation. Remember, the topic or the chapter today that we are looking at is to how to solve equation. But before you solve equation, you have to determine the type of equation you are dealing with. If you look at the first one, the name of the equation depends on the power of the variable. What do I mean by that? Let's look at this. Let's look at the first equation in details. So here we have 5x, the first equation, plus 9 equals to 24. So here we need to understand what some of the names that we used in mathematics to label this expression. Obviously, we know 24 on the right-hand side of the equation is a expression. We know that 5x plus 9 is a mathematical expression, but we can name this 24, the mathematical term for it, we call it a constant. It's important we build our vocabulary. You understand? It's good to know how to solve it, but before we have to build our mathematical vocabulary so that when we talk, we know when someone talk, we will understand what the person is talking about. So the 9 also here is a constant. The 5 here is coefficient. I'm sure you have heard about this. Everything I have said so far is something that you have heard in high school, but we need this refresher course or topic so that we can all be on the same level. We are coming from different schools. So the x here is the variable. Very important is the variable. So how do you know that? We said that this is what is a linear equation. But how do you know that it's a linear equation? You look at this variable. You have to look at the variable in the equation. And here the variable in this equation is x. And the power of x, it's not written there, but if the variable is not having a power, we assume that it's having a 1. And if the variable is having a power of 1, we always say that equation is linear. If the highest power if the highest power that the variable is having within a mathematical equation is 1, then we will call it a linear equation. So this is how we determine whether an equation is linear or not. So if you have an equation, you look at the variable. If the variable is having 1, normally they will not write this 1 there, but if no power is written, we assume it's 1. And based on that, then we can classify it as a linear equation. So this constant plus this coefficient rather, with these constants that we have, there is a name for it. We call them parameter. So in mathematics, the constant, which is this 5, the coefficient, which is this 5, then 9 is a constant, 24 is a constant. If sometimes together we call them parameters. So what I'm trying to do here is to build your mathematics vocabulary. When you speak, you should speak like a mathematician, not like someone studying literature. Every language, every subject has its own language. So it is very important we build some mathematical vocabulary so that when you are speaking, I will understand. So that when I'm speaking, you will understand too. So how do we know that this equation is a linear equation? It depends on the power that we have here. Normally, linear equation, they will not write the power there. No, we have this x here. Since there is no power, we assume it's 1. And if it's 1, then we have it as a linear equation. Let's look at the next equation like this. X raised to the power of 2 plus 8x minus 9 equals to 0. So we concluded that with this equation, that it's a quadratic equation. But the question is, how do we know that it's a quadratic equation? As I said, it's a mathematical equation because we have equals to sign dividing two mathematical expressions. One is on the left-hand side, the other is on the right-hand side. But how comes we know that this is quadratic equation? How? It's quadratic equation. If you want to know whether an equation is quadratic or linear, what you have to do is to look at the variables. Here also, this is a constant. This is 9. So this also is a constant. Here is a coefficient. What do we mean by coefficient? If a number is attached to a variable, that number is a coefficient. Then here we have x also, this as a variable. We have this x also as a variable. If you checked it very well, we have in two variables here, this one and this one. So the power here, the power is 2 here, even though it's not written, but we assume the power is 1. So to know whether an equation is a quadratic equation, you look at the variables in the equation. We have this variable raised to the power of 2. We have this variable x raised to the power of 1. So we look at the variable with the highest power, and this variable is the one with the highest power, and its power is 2. And because the power is 2, we have quadratic equation. This is how we determine quadratic equation. So if you looked at it, here we have only one variable, which is x, and the power is 1. And because the power is 1 and it's the only variable, then we have the equation as a linear equation. But if we go further, we have x raised to the power of 2 plus 8x minus 9 equals to 0. We have two variables, x here, x here. The x here, the power is 1. The x here is the power is 2. So whether an equation is quadratic or linear, you look at the power, you look at the variable with the highest power, and in this case is 2. And when the highest power is 2 within an equation, then we term or refer that mathematical equation as quadratic equations. So you can see that our focus is on what? So far, linear. This is linear, quadratic, and system of equation. In applying mathematics in economics and other social sciences or businesses, these are some of the frequent equations that you will use to solve business problems and other social science problems. So it is important we know how to identify them and how to solve them. So today our focus will be on how to solve them. But before going on to solve some of these equations, we need to know how to identify them. And it's exactly what we are doing. We have talked about how to identify linear equation. You look at the power. If the highest power there is 1, then we call it linear equation. Here we look at the equation. If the highest power there is 2, we call it quadratic. So this is how we identify this equation. But sometimes we can also have system of equation. For example, this 2x plus 3y equals to 18. Then we can also have another equation, 3x minus 4y equals to minus 7. So if you look at this, we said that this equation is called what? System of equations. We identify it as what? Or the name of it is what? System of equations. System of equations. So in some book you will see it as simultaneous. Simultaneous. So it's the same thing. So if you have two equations, if you see this, the first equation, let's call this as a first equation, and this one as a second equation. If you look at the first equation, is 2x plus 3y equals to 18. But if you look at here, we have this as a variable. We have this as a variable. We have this as a variable, So here, the power is not written, but we can assume, because if you see a variable within an equation and there is no power on top of it, you can assume the power is 1, power is 1, power is 1. So the highest power here for any of the variable is 1. So we can say that this system of equation is linear system of equation. Because here the first equation is linear and the second equation also is linear. So when we have two linear equations, we bring them together, we call it a system of equation or simultaneous equation. However, there is a possibility that this is 2. If it's 2, you cannot call it a linear system of equation. But what we will be doing in this course, it will be linear system of equation. That is, you have two linear equation. This is a linear equation, two linear equation. They ask you to find the value of x and y. We have seen this in high school as well. This is just a refresher course before we start our main topics. So now that we know what is an equation, so far what we have done, we know what is an equation. We know this so far, I assume. Two, we can identify types. We know types of equation and how to identify them. We talked about linear equation. If the highest power within the equation is 1, we can call it linear equation. We also have quadratic. We said that if the highest power that a variable has is 2, we call it quadratic equation. Then we also have system of equation. In a system of equation, we have two linear equations that we bring together. So this is what we have covered so far. So after that, now we know what is an equation. After we know this, after knowing what is an equation, it's just two mathematical expressions divided by an equals to sign. The one expression is on the right, the other expression is on the left. We talked about types of equation. This is not the total type of equation we have in mathematics. And there are other types of equation, cubic, trigonometric, logarithm, something like that. But our focus will be on this. If time permit us, then we can look at other types of equation. But the applications that we will be using for this course, it will center on linear, quadratic, and system of equation so far. So now that we know what is an equation, and the types of equation that we will look at in this course, we know it already, I assume. Let's start talking about what do we mean by solving an equation, which is our topic. What do we mean by solving an equation? What do we mean by solving an equation? What do we mean by this? For example, let's take an equation. For example, 3x plus 10 equals to x plus 4. So what does it mean to solve this equation? Here, to solve an equation, it means to find the numerical value of the variable within the equation, so that when we substitute it into the equation, the left-hand side will be equal to the right-hand side. Let me come again. So when we talked about solving an equation, the topic, which is our topic, how to solve the equation, like how to solve linear equation, how to solve quadratic equation, how to solve system of equation. What we mean by that, we want to find the numerical value of this x. This is our topic. So what we mean, what is the numerical value of this x? This is what we want to find. So solving an equation means that to find the value of x. So anytime they say solve this equation, solve that equation, or solve this equation, what they are asking you, find the numerical value of x. So this is our topic. We are trying, we have an equation, we understand this is maybe linear or quadratic equation. Having all those information, then find the value of the variable, find the numerical value of the variable. So let's take this. You will see this example in the materials I sent to you. I don't know, yesterday or 2 days back. So let's take this as an example, e.g. example 1. So let's try to solve this equation, 3x plus 10 equals to x plus 4. Let's try to solve this. So we have this equation, 3x plus 10 equals to x plus 4. So if they said solve this equation, what they are asking you, they want you to find the value of this x. First, what you need to do, you need to know that this 10 is a constant. And this 4 is also a constant. And this x is a variable. This is a variable. And this is a coefficient. So what you have to do, you have to collect the like terms to solve this kind of equation. And remember also, before you solve it, you need to identify what type of equation are you dealing with. First, you look at the variable. We have x here, x here. Obviously, the power is not reading, but we know that if the power is not reading, we can write it as 1. So the highest power that a variable has in this equation is 1. And when we said that when the highest power that a variable has within an equation is 1, it should be linear equation. So we know that this is linear equation. So next you go and solve it. To solve it, we have to collect the like terms on the one side. This 3x, and this x on the other side of the equation, they are like terms. So we collect them. So this one, we bring it to this other side of the equation, and we bring this to the other side of the equation. So here we will have 3x. Remember, when a variable is going to the other side of the equation, the signs will change. So the sign here is positive. If it's changing, it will change into negative x. This is a constant, this is a constant. They are like terms. So we transfer this to the other side of the equation, which is the right hand side. So we will have equals to sign here, 4 minus 10. Some of you have seen this already and might find it very easy, but we need to do this refresher course for some people, so that when we start the functions and derivative or calculus, then it will be easier. We will all have the prerequisite that is required. So the third one is this 3x. If you like, you can put 1 here. So it's 3x minus 1x. It will give you 2x equals to minus 6. So the goal here, remember, after 40 minutes, this will go off, but I will come back again. So you people can log in or you wait for me. After every 40 minutes, it goes off. But I will log back again. We continue with the lectures, please. Okay, let's continue. So our goal is to find the value of x. So to do that, we divide both sides by x. 2 rather, we divide both sides by 2, divide both sides by 2. So the fourth step here, now we will cancel this and we will cancel this. Then x will be what? X equals to minus 6 over 2. Remember, our goal, when we say our chapter is what? Solving equations. Our goal, and when we said solve an equation, it means to find the numerical value of x, which we did. But we can also go forward and simplify this. This can go here once into here 3 times. So now the equation is solved. So you will see that if you substitute the value of x here, in place of this, you put minus 3 there. In place of this, you put minus 3 there. The left hand side should be equals to the right hand side. So now this equation is solved. So over the course of this, during this course, you will see that we will use equation like this or system of equation to solve some of the business problems and some of the social science problems. First, as always, when you have equation, you have to make sure you identify what type of equation. Then from there, you can start working on the solution. It helps. So let's look at another type of equation as well, another example. Like, let's say we have example 2. So, some of these, or most of them, you can find them in the materials I shared with you. So let's have an equation like this, 6p minus. So all what we will be doing today is to look at ways how we can solve some of the equation. And as I said, the equation that we will be looking at is quadratic equations, linear equations, and system of equations. Some people will call it simultaneous equations for this course. Saying, looking at these 3 equations doesn't mean that it's the only equations we have in mathematics. There are others. We will, if time permits us, we finish these 3 equations, we will even look at other equations that are very complex, like exponential and trigonometrics, which have good application in economics, especially when it comes to dynamic relationship between 2 variables. But for now, let's look at linear, quadratic, and system of equation, and we build on that. Then from there we can look at more complex equations. All right. So we have these equations, and what's the goal? Remember, is to solve the equation. And to solve the equation, it means to find the value of the variable. So here, first we have to, as I said, what type of equation is this? To know the type of equation, you have to look at the variable. What is the highest power there a variable is having within that equation? So we have this is P, is a variable. We have P is a variable. We have P is a variable. We have P is a variable. But if you look at each of these variables, this P, the power is 1, even though it's not reading. If it's not reading, you assume that the variable has a power of 1. This is power 1, this is power 1, and this is power 1. And we talked about this. When the highest power within an equation that a variable has is 1, we call it a linear equation. So you just don't jump and solve equation. Try to ask yourself, what type of equation am I dealing with? So this is linear equation. Then after we identify what type of equation are we trying to solve or dealing with, then we can start to solve it. So 2, what we will do here, we have, this is a coefficient as we identify it, a number that is attached to a variable, we call it a coefficient. This is also somehow it will end up with a coefficient. No. But then we have a bracket here. Before we even go, we have a bracket here. In mathematics, the first thing that you should do when an equation is having a bracket, you should expand it. We should expand the bracket. And to expand this bracket, if we expand this bracket, this 6p will come here, minus. So what does this mean? Half, or 1/2 times in bracket 2p minus 3. What it is telling you, this half, you multiply it by all the terms in this bracket. So what we will have, it will be 1/2 times 2/p. This dot here means times. Then from there, we have minus 1/2 times minus 3. This is minus, so it will change into positive. So we will have 1/2 times 3. So we expand the bracket. Now we have equals to sign. We have another bracket here. We have to expand this. By expansion, I mean multiply this 3 by every term within the bracket. And the terms within the bracket are what? 1 and minus p. So 3 times 1, we will have 3 here. We will have 3. Then 3 times minus 1 P, sorry, 3 times minus P, it will give us minus 3P. Here also we have minus 7 over 6 multiplied by a bracket, and within the bracket we have P plus 4. So what does that mean? It means multiply this fraction by every term within the bracket. And within the bracket, we have 2 terms, P and plus 4. So here we will have, this is minus 7 over 6 times this, we will have something like this, minus 7 P over 6. So remember, we will also have, we have this 1P7. Okay, this is 2. Sorry, this should be 2, not 4. This should be 2. So minus 7 over 6 times plus 2, we will have minus we will have minus 7 over 6 times 2. Note that this is 2, you can change it. So now that we expand this bracket, this 6P is here, minus 1, 2 times this bracket, we expanded it, we have it here.